Hi everyone. I, 32M, never expected my life to flip so dramatically just because I got engaged, but that's exactly what happened when my fiancé, 31F, introduced me to her parents' ridiculous scheme. I honestly believe she was the perfect partner, chill, supportive, and never the type to stir up drama. We both came from average families, had decent jobs, and paid our bills on time. I work in marketing at a local firm, nothing fancy, but it's enough to cover rent and groceries. She's been in retail management for a while, and we've been quietly saving for our future. Turns out her parents had other ideas. I first noticed something odd when her father began talking about family support and tried hinting that, as the soon-to-be son-in-law, I should be ready to chip in if they needed it. At first, I assumed he was just that old-fashioned dad who tests you to see if you're responsible. My own parents are super chill. My dad works part-time at a grocery store, my mom's retired, and we've never demanded money from anyone. But something about my fiancé's father felt off, like he was checking my wallet more than my character. It got weirder when her mother called, acting all sweet, saying they had a tiny favor to ask, one I should keep between us. She claimed it was a family tradition and that they wanted to surprise my fiancé eventually. Huge red flag. Who asks for money but insists you hide it from your future spouse? I tried giving them the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe they just had a quirk. But I agreed to hear them out, not wanting to start a war before the wedding. When I dropped by their place, her parents were practically beaming, leading me to the dining table like I was a prized cow. They offered me coffee, started small talk, then launched into a pitch about an incredible investment. Supposedly it would triple whatever we put in, guaranteeing huge returns. I asked for details, but all they did was spew buzzwords like multiply and guaranteed. They were being so vague it gave me chills. I said I wasn't comfortable investing without actual proof. That's when they switched to guilt trips, implying that a real son-in-law wouldn't hesitate to help family. The father made some comment about trust and how if I really cared about his daughter, I'd show it by backing them up. I left feeling uneasy, but I kept my cool. That night I told my fiancé what went down. She seemed genuinely shocked, even a bit ashamed of her folks. But as the days went by, she started saying maybe they meant well, that perhaps this was their odd way of testing me. It bothered me that she was sort of defending them, but I tried not to overreact. I just couldn't shake this feeling that something seriously sketchy was going on. Things blew up at a family barbecue for her aunt's birthday. We were chilling in the backyard, and I was trying to enjoy the food. Her father cornered me near the grill, waving these crappy brochures that promised insane gains on real estate. One glance told me it was probably a ripoff. The layout screamed pyramid scheme, but he kept going on about how we'd regret missing such an easy money grab. I kept backing away, trying to be polite, but he just hammered on, telling me I was letting down the family if I didn't hop in. By night's end, I was overwhelmed. The father was making snide remarks about me being unreliable, and the mother was giving me the stink eye. My fiancé tried to mediate, but it was tense. The next day, my mom called, sounding rattled. Apparently, my fiancé's mother had reached out to her, whining about how they were barely getting by, how tradition dictated I should support them, and so on. My mom basically told me not to give them a single cent, which was the exact push I needed to see through their nonsense. I attempted one last calm discussion with her father. We met at a diner where I laid out that I wasn't comfortable investing in something that looked shady and that my fiancé deserved to be in the loop. He snapped, accusing me of not trusting him and acting like I was ungrateful for everything they'd done for their daughter. He hinted he could the wedding if I didn't play ball. I told him we could postpone the wedding if he insisted on pushing the scam. That's when he started muttering he'd make my life a living nightmare. I walked out, heart pounding, but more determined than ever to protect myself. When I told my fiancé about it, she got emotional, saying her dad was just lashing out. She begged me to keep the peace. I said there's a difference between keeping peace and throwing all my savings at a shady deal. We argued late into the night. Nothing got resolved. The wedding date was inching closer, and I felt trapped between not wanting to lose her and refusing to be a gullible target. But then I got the idea to pretend I was on board to see how deep this scam really ran and to collect proof that would keep me safe. I texted her father, claiming I was open to hearing more about the investment. He sounded thrilled, telling me to come over. This time I walked into their living room to find a full setup. Brochures, printouts, a laptop with some generic website that bragged about massive profits. They claimed I'd only have to drop a small deposit, and soon enough the returns would be rolling in. Her mother was talking about how this was the chance of a lifetime. I fought the urge to roll my eyes and recorded everything secretly on my phone. When I asked about risks, her father admitted that if it tanked, I'd be on the hook since it'd be in my name. That was all I needed to hear. To my surprise, my fiancé was relieved when she thought I was considering it. She said she was tired of the drama, and if doing this made her parents happy, then maybe we could finally focus on the wedding. I hated lying to her, but I also couldn't see another way out. I was worried she might have been more influenced by her parents than she let on, or maybe she was just naive. Either way, it added a new layer of doubt about whether we'd survive as a couple. Her father then wanted me to sign some documents naming me as the main investor. I insisted on a letter stating I was giving funds solely at his request and that he was the one handling everything. He shrugged and signed, probably too eager to care. I took that letter straight to a lawyer friend who told me it can help big time if this scheme went up in flames. He also said if they tried to stick me with a blame, the letter showed they were the ones orchestrating it. Meanwhile, arguments with my fiancée got worse. She said it was humiliating that I involved a lawyer, that her dad just wanted me to trust him. I told her any legit investment shouldn't be afraid of a lawyer. She'd tear up, call me paranoid, and I'd feel guilty, but I still wasn't going to budge. Eventually, her father threw down a final ultimatum. Either I handed over the deposit before the wedding, or he'd tell everyone I was a bad provider, possibly not even show up at the ceremony. His plan was to force me into caving so I wouldn't have to deal with wedding drama. That's when I decided I was done playing nice. I told him we should finalize everything at my lawyer's office to keep it official. He hemmed and hawed but agreed, maybe thinking he could still con me into signing something. We all met at my lawyer's office. My fiancée waited in the lobby, pacing around like a wreck. Her parents arrived dressed like they were interviewing for a job they didn't deserve. We sat at a long conference table, my lawyer across from them, reading off a contract that detailed how any money I provided would be protected, and that if the investment failed, her parents had to return every dime. You should have seen their faces. My lawyer asked them to show official paperwork verifying this wasn't some shady scheme. They scrambled, bringing out their silly brochures and referencing websites that obviously weren't from real financial institutions. I stayed quiet while my lawyer drilled them about disclaimers, risk factors, and actual proof that these returns were legitimate. They basically had nothing. Finally, the father lost his temper, shouting that I was betraying him and acting like I was better than the family. That's when my lawyer casually slid out the letter he'd signed, pointing out that by his own admission he was the one pushing for this. If it turned out to be a scam, he could be held liable for fraud. Her mother started yelling that I'd backed him into a corner, that this was never how it was supposed to go. I calmly responded that they'd threatened me, tried to guilt me, and left me no choice. My fiancé broke down crying, pleading for everyone to just stop. The father slammed his hand on the table, said I'd pay for humiliating him, and stormed out. The mother followed, glaring at me like I was some villain. It was pure chaos, but at least they weren't getting a cent from me. Outside, my fiancée turned on me, saying I'd ruined her bond with her parents and turned a simple favor into a scandal. I reminded her that her dad had threatened to ruin our wedding and had basically confessed to a con. She yelled that if I loved her, I'd have just believed him. The argument was brutal. She said we should call off the wedding until I apologized to her parents. I refused, telling her I wasn't going to bow to scammers. She cried and walked away without another word. Over the next few days, I heard from different relatives. Some call me a jerk, believing whatever story her parents told them. Others quietly thanked me for exposing the father because apparently he borrowed money from people in the past and never paid them back. No one had ever confronted him successfully, so I guess I'd opened the floodgates. A few hinted they might press charges, especially after they heard how my lawyer pinned him down. A week later, my fiancée texted me, saying we were done unless I made things right with her parents. By then, I was exhausted. I told her I was fine calling off the wedding because I wasn't about to chase after people who tried to scam me. My parents supported me, saying they'd always had a weird feeling about her folks. I felt awful losing someone I loved, but I also knew I couldn't sign up for a lifetime of drama. Word spread that her father was facing an investigation for fraud, sparked by others who came forward. He'd threatened so many people before that it was finally catching up to him. I didn't feel bad. He dug his own grave, and I wasn't about to be buried alongside him. My life was turned upside down for a while. Cancelled wedding, loads of stress, broken engagement. But at least I never handed over the money. My dad told me he was proud I stood up for myself, and my mom was relieved I hadn't folded under pressure. In the weeks after everything blew up, I had moments where I second-guessed myself, wondering if I should have kept quiet and gone along for my fiancé's sake. Every time that thought crossed my mind, I reminded myself that entering a marriage under that kind of pressure would have been a ticking time bomb. My friends told me I dodged more than a bullet. I dodged a full-on missile. Even now, I look at our old engagement photos and feel a stab of regret, but I know deep down that letting them bully me into a lifetime of shady dealings would have been worse. Looking back, it still messes with my head that people can be so entitled and manipulative. I guess there's a lesson in this. Watch out for anyone who tries to guilt you into throwing common sense out the window. If they're pushing you to hide financial stuff from your partner, that's a giant warning sign. I might have lost a relationship, but I kept my integrity and my savings. That means more to me than a wedding with con artists calling the shots. I'm moving forward, focusing on rebuilding my life. Even though it hurts to lose who I thought was the one, at least now I see her parents for who they really are, and maybe she does too. I hope sharing this experience will help somebody else avoid a similar train wreck. Money and family can get messy, but when someone starts demanding shady handouts, do yourself a favor and say no. Don't wait until you're neck deep in their nonsense. Trust your gut. If you're about to marry into a family that refuses to respect boundaries, consider it a massive red flag. I wish I had recognized it sooner, but at least I got out before signing my life away. If you're stuck in a similar spot, stand your ground. You'll thank yourself later.